Let's do it. Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Tucker. I'm the VP of Revenue here at User Interviews. I'll let these two amazing colleagues introduce themselves in a moment. Just a couple words on our session today. The main goal here is to bring our amazing researchers and their teams a little bit closer to our product org. Typically, myself and the revenue team act as that conduit. Right? We're getting feedback and hearing questions from our researchers. We love sharing all those insights with our product team. We're getting updates from our product team on roadmap and feasibility. And then we, of course, share that back with our researchers. And while the revenue team loves that role, we thought it would be fun to bring those two groups a little bit closer together, at least for 30 minutes. So this is the very first version of these product talks. And if today goes well, we'll make it a quarterly affair. Yes, fingers crossed. So that's the goal for the day. The agenda, Brittany, otherwise known as User Interviews, is going to take us through our newest features. JH, our VP of Product, VP of Product is going to take us through the roadmap. And then we'll spend the last few minutes taking your questions. And I'll just repeat some advice that JH gave 5 minutes ago, which is excited to answer your questions about the product, questions about the roadmap. Please put those questions in the Q&A so that everyone in the room can see those questions and can take advantage of the upvoting features there. So welcome again. Brittany, over to you.
Yes, let's get this deck. Can you see the typical, can you see it?
Yes. I think we're good.
Awesome. Oh no, a preview. Okay.
There you go.
Here we are. I'm going to run through these pretty fast because we have limited time, but I am going to send a recording tomorrow along with any support guides or blog posts or anything we have related to these features, so you can deep dive if you want, and feel free to respond to that email when I send it if you have any questions about the features covered or other stuff. All right. So the first two features we're going to go over have to do with automating research logistics. So many of you probably know and love this one already, but our Zoom integration, which is available for all that use user interviews. And through it, you can automatically generate and send unique meeting links. So once you've synced your Zoom account, you can add it as the meeting location, whether you're in the builder or in a live project. And what I love about this one is cuts down on manual steps, saves time, and we're also seeing a reduction in no-shows for projects that use Zoom on their online projects. So it also helps get participants in successfully to your sessions. I just wanted to do a quick call out here too. As part of this effort, we also created a concept of session moderators. So, if your team has multiple people that you want joining in on a session, it's a great way to, kind of assign who gets what and get those links automatically generated. Okay. Next up is document signing, which is a paid add-on feature for paid subscriptions. And you can automate getting your NDA, release form, consent form, anything you want signed by participants. You add a doc when you're building your project, and participants will be prompted to review and sign that doc as part of their normal scheduling flow. So they don't have to download your document. They don't have to open up a new program or anything like that. They don't have to email it back to you. Once they confirm their session, that document will be sent to you in a PDF. So very handy. That's what we're seeing here is the participant experience, where it's just all built in, makes it really simple for them. And so when you go to your confirm participants tab, you will see that, or confirm sessions tab, you will see that all confirmed participants have signed your document. So you don't have that last minute panic of like, who signed my document? Let me, follow up with these people. I need to cancel someone because they haven't signed my document. You have that assurity and peace of mind that all confirmed participants have signed my document. I can keep it moving. And then a fun tidbit is we're actually seeing of studies that need an NDA. if you have document signing on the project, you have about 10% less cancellations. So again, helps participants get what they need for your study so they can participate effectively. And then the last three features we're going to go over have to deal with engagement from Hub emails. So these are features available for paid Hub subscriptions. The first is invite rules. So it helps you invite participants, the right participants at the right time. Right here you can see we have our internal team's Research Hub invite rules. And a popular one is the last invited date. So some comments we were hearing was that, sorry, JH, I told you I was going to give you time after each feature to comment.
Yeah, no, it's cool. No, I thought you did a really good job with the Zoom and session link and moderator stuff. So I think I didn't have anything to add. And we had a question on multiple documents for document signing, which is a really interesting use case. Tucker fielded it in the chat, but we'd love to better understand that use case in terms of what those documents are and why it's helpful for you to have them in separate files versus one compiled document or whatever. So if maybe follow up on that. So that'd be
yeah, I realize I can't see the chat or anything else. So
yeah, it's hard when you're presenting.
Just let me know. Okay.
Got a lot of things on your screen.
Cool. I mean, you can add, if you want to combine those documents into one. Participants sign in a box. They don't sign in the field. So if they've signed, that means they've reviewed the docs. So if you want to combo them, if you have multiple docs, but anyway, we'll get back to that later.
Question that I hear sometimes that I'm sure you both can answer. Document storage, is that something that we are aware of, may look into again in the future? Where is that on the roadmap?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to understand with the document signing feature and flow was we knew there was a need for it. And so that's one of those things where we had heard it quite a bit and wanted to get the V1 out there to see how it solved those needs. And I think what we've learned is a couple things. One is it's really helpful if the document is easily accessible off the participant. So right now, we email you the signed file. So I think that's going to be an iteration we look through. We've also got some really good feedback around what those document names are to make them more helpful for the researcher as well. And so I think there's, a good likelihood we revisit and follow up with some iterations on that. But it's not something that we have an immediate timetable from. It's something really where we're just getting the initial usage and getting the initial feedback right now. So as we plan, and we work in a pretty fluid iterative planning cycle. So I think there's a good chance to work that in somewhere.
We got another doc signing question. This is not a phrase that I've heard, so asking it here. Is the doc signing 21 CFR Part 11 compliant? Which is not a compliance code that I'm familiar with. JH, Brittany, any insight?
Me neither. Let's write that down and research what that means.
Yeah, for what it's worth, and you could see in that video, it's running through HelloSign behind the scenes in terms of who's powering the signatures. So we might be able to also look through some of their documentation in terms of what the compliance is as well. But we can follow up with that.
Yeah, great doc signing questions.
Nice. Yeah, this is I like that we get to learn a lot from these calls as well. So this is great.
Yeah. Okay. Just to finish up invite rules. Can't remember now after that if I talked about this, but a main use case is preventing participant invite fatigue. So if you have a lot of researchers on your team and they're all doing different studies and they're all inviting participants for those studies, there's a chance that you're maybe bombarding the same participant with invites over and over. So through these checks, it just helps make sure that when we send invites, we're not sending them to folks that don't meet your criteria.
Yeah, so the only thing I would just add on this one, Brittany, I think you covered it really well, is just you have basically all of the standard filter criteria you have in Hub available to set rules around. To Brittany's point, we're seeing a lot of usage around the invitation and participation dates because people don't want to over contact people in their user base. And obviously, the larger the team using Hub, the more acute the need here. But you can set filters and rules off of any of the data that lives in Hub. So it's pretty flexible in terms of what you can do with it.
All right, next up is email themes. So helps you customize your Hub email branding. So you can, I mocked one up here. So let's pretend I'm doing a study to talk to our Awkward Silence podcast users. Shout out to JH and Aaron. I put in, instead of our maybe our team logo, I added a kind of topical logo in there and changed a button and some other styles to just kind of reflect that change. So you can change features like, you know, the font size, the button color, brand logo. I added a different footer message in here. And so if you send emails to your participants off platform, maybe you want to make the emails look more like those emails so that you kind of have a sense of consistency throughout all emails. Or maybe like in this case, you just want to add a little flair that's dependent on the project you're working on.
Yeah, Brittany, just one thing I want to touch on this one, because I think it's helpful from like the product standpoint, is we like intentionally and very knowingly started with you customize these using HTML and CSS, which can be a little intimidating, you know, depending on your level of comfort with those languages. But the reason for that is the teams we spoke to who were really using Hub in a high volume way was that they wanted like the advanced mode where they could go through and control all aspects of the email in terms of the spacing and the font and everything else. And so the best way to do that is to just give them access to that code. And that way you can make these look exactly like your marketing email if you have, you know, people on staff that are talented with these tools. We do know that for some teams, they would like a much lighter, more friendly format in terms of, hey, I just want to bump the font size up a little bit and change the color of the button, and I don't need to get into all this markup and intimidating stuff. And so that's something that's very much on our radar. But for the initial use case, the goal was to give researchers as much power as possible to customize these to match whatever branding they want to have. And then we're going to look for some follow-ups in the future about also having a simpler, kind of more basic editor where you can still control the look and feel in useful ways, but not have to get into all the HTML and CSS if you don't want to. Just wanted to add that on as a future thing we're evaluating.
For sure. Okay, and last up is email templates, which is the newest Hub email feature released, I think, early January. And this is probably my favorite out of the 3 Hub features because I have kind of a unique, I don't know, I like fun words. I like ending my email in cheers. I like emojis. I like certain, I don't know, I like to have a little spice to my emails. So this feature allows you to edit our automated email copy and make it whatever you want and save it. And you and your team can repurpose it for projects over and over again. And this just helps your users, you know, maybe you are close, you have a relationship with your panel, maybe you built it up yourself and you've talked to them many times and you want those emails to sound familiar, have that tone of voice that they're used to. Or even think if you haven't spoken to that participant before, it's even nice that if once they get into your session, you're interviewing them, if you've already kind of established some, you know, through your emails, who you are. So yeah, that's the last one. Pushing it over to JH for what we're building next. Sorry, Tucker.
I like it. You read my face, Brittany. Brittany, that was great. Any questions on those features that Brittany showed off? All before we hand it over to JH. Awkward silence done. JH, over to you.
Cool. All right. So some of you may have seen this since it is something we are currently testing out in the wild. But one thing we're trying to do is really clean up the experience around how you create a project on user interviews. And so taking some of the patterns we use in what we call the workspace, where you manage your project once you have participants coming in, but also giving ourselves some room to grow here. So the characteristics page, for instance, was starting to become a very long list of options, not all of which were relevant to all studies and all researchers. So making that a little bit more condensed so that you can opt into the ones that are meaningful for your study, and just better organizing it. And then, you know, from our perspective, you know, addressing some accessibility issues, leaning into our design system components and things like that to just standardize the app in general. We've gotten some really good feedback on this, and it's something we're going to do a couple small iterations on based on that, and then hopefully roll out to everybody soon. So like I said, you may have already seen this out in the wild. You may not have, because it's currently an A/B test, but it's something hopefully that after a couple of revisions based on some of the feedback we've got from the researchers who have been through it, we'll be rolling this out to everyone shortly. So, you know, no dramatic functional changes in how you go about creating a project, just went through and Brittany helped a lot in terms of cleaning up some of the copy to make it more intuitive to people coming through it for the first time, changing some of the groupings of how, what fields live together based on some card sorting exercises we did with the researchers, things like that. So again, for people who are familiar with the product, probably not a dramatic change other than some stuff moving around a little bit. But the real hope is for people new to user interviews, they find this much more approachable and easier to navigate and understand what some of these options mean. So
I've got a question, and then there's a question from Kyle. My question, JH and Brittany, is will half of my team see the new builder and half see the old builder? How is product segmented?
Great question. Yeah, so this is one where we are doing the A/B test. The randomization is happening at the team level. So something we were really sensitive to was it's going to be jarring if you and a colleague are looking at the same project, but through very different interfaces. It's like that's a hard way to collaborate. And so we're splitting who sees which experience at the team level. So all people on the same team will see the same experience. So that's a great question. And then, yeah, I see there's a question here in the chat. Right. So Kyle, in terms of if we select nothing, does it count as doesn't matter? That is correct, which is definitely something that is not super intuitive and feedback we've gotten. So that's on our radar as well. Obviously, the old one, there's an explicit, this does not matter. It's a little bit more implicit in this layout. And so if you leave it blank, that's the equivalent of it doesn't matter, but that's something we're actually talking to some researchers. I have a few sessions tomorrow to dig into some of that as well. So.
Another great question from Lancy. Can you see that in the chat, JH?
Yes. So we don't have an immediate plan on the professional field, but that is something strategically we're thinking a lot about with our operations team in particular, and how we can better structure that data. And what we'd like to do is kind of make it so that the system is more unified on both sides, so that participants are entering their job titles in a more structured kind of formatted way. And then researchers have access to that same list. So it's a little bit easier for the targeting to happen across the parties. In addition to job title, we're also very likely to add some adjacent B2B fields. So we've added industry, but we've also realized that department or function, however you may refer to it, like marketing, as well as seniority can also be important targeting criteria. And so we've seen in going through some B2B projects and talking to researchers, there are times where industry, function, and seniority are actually enough to target. You don't even need to get into job titles. So you can just say, we need somebody who works in the energy industry, in the marketing department, and is like director or above, right? Like that's our target. So we are looking into, in addition to improving the way that the professions itself are structured, adding in some additional kind of like adjacent targeting criteria is very much on the radar, and something that I think we're likely to get into in the Q2, Q3 window.
Why don't we maybe keep going, JH? These are awesome questions, team, and I'm seeing them all. Let's have you save the rest, JH, for Q&A. Because I want to get to these last two updates.
Awesome. Yeah. This one is a little bit behind the scenes for a period, but we want to touch on it. In particular, if you have this need, would love to talk to you so that you can help inform what this becomes. So it's a little bit of my own research pitch here, but we know that for a lot of teams, our current team model breaks down with a lot of users. You see projects in your list that are not totally relevant to you. You can't kind of organize things the way you want. So what we're doing is we're creating the notion of an organization that will kind of span across the top. And then within that, you can have different teams that can share certain assets and things like that, but also be a little bit more siloed so that you're only collaborating or seeing projects from your immediate colleagues. And the example here obviously is very fictitious, but it might be something that you break out on department. It might be something you break out on like engineering squad. It might be something you break out on business unit if you're a really big company. Obviously, there's lots of different ways people might want to organize. And the idea is to create something that is flexible for those different use cases. So this is something where we're doing some of the groundwork now. And like I said, really looking to find people who would benefit from this structure. So if that's you, please send us a note. We'll get you in some research sessions of our own to share some concepts and really understand your needs here. But it's something that we think will make managing a large number of users in the same team a lot more straightforward. And with that, sorry, just to touch on it, we'll also get into a little bit more permissioning around who has access to what, who's the admin, who's just a researcher, different roles, things like that. So there's a lot of discovery work that we need to do here, but seems to be a common pain point that we've heard quite a bit. So excited to lay some of the groundwork and then iterate on it from there. Cool. This one is a little behind the scenes, but it is the core value prop of user interviews. So I'm excited that we are working on it, and I think you all will be as well, is really improving our matching capabilities. And I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty in terms of the intricacies of what we're doing to improve that. But what we're really aiming to do here is speeding up how quickly we can feed projects. So we're going to really make the system much faster in terms of how we can target and process data. As you might imagine, we have a lot of data on participants, on a lot of participants in our audience. They've taken tons of surveys. We have millions of records. And so how we process all that data so that we can really target rapidly off it is something that is kind of an infrastructure problem in ways. We want to really improve speeding up. I don't know if we'll be that quick, Josh, but we'll see if we can get there. A big piece of this that we want to really focus on too is improving the participant notification experience. We get a lot of feedback from the participant side of the platform that sometimes it feels like they're getting notified too often or too infrequent, or projects that seem like not a good fit for them. Why did I get this? So we want to also make sure that we're really keeping the participant side of the audience happy and focusing on the experience of, hey, this project's a good fit for you. Why do we think that is? And giving them options to, edit their preferences, things like that. And then a part of that as well is making sure that when new people sign up for the platform, that they have a good chance of receiving opportunities early in their life cycle. We know that people are really excited the moment they sign up and they're eager to participate. And we want to make sure that we get them in the mix and serve them opportunities sooner rather than later. So making sure that the system prioritizes some of those newer folks to get them in, and also so we can start learning about them. We learn a lot of data every time somebody fills out a survey, and that helps us personalize their recommendations going forward. And so it's really important that those new people complete some surveys so that we understand the services they use and the things they do, and we have some of that targeting criteria. So those are a couple of the things that we're doing behind the scenes. Like I said, some of it's kind of infrastructure. Some of it will start to get into some of those B2B topics we talked about earlier around how we target professions and industry and functions, stuff like that. So that would be under this umbrella as well. And this is something that we'll probably be iterating on for a little while here as well. Cool.
Thanks for that summary. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
Got lots of questions, so I'm gonna speed them through. We're also mostly in the chat versus the Q&A, but that's okay. You all can do no wrong. Lancy asks, we've also found some inconsistency in people's ages. Can we have them enter their birth date so their age stays current? And Meg, I'll tack on at it, asks a similar question, which is more about the core update experience for panelist information. Like how often are we asking panelists to update their info? And then that specific birth date example from Lancy.
Yeah, so the birth date example is just a good one. That is something that we should look into. The piece that's related to that is updating demographic information. We have the notion of our system that we call grace periods internally. And so for each demographic field we collect, we have we can set a different grace period. So we don't see the need to ask people, every 30 days what their household income is, for instance. That doesn't change usually that often. So what we do is demographic by demographic, we set a different duration. And once that amount of time is lapsed for an individual, the next time that they apply, they're prompted to update that specific demographic where they're outside of the quote unquote grace period. And so, where do you live? I think we ask every 360 days or 365, maybe it's a year. And I don't have all of them off the top of my head, but we've gone through with our customer success and project coordinator team and try to set ones that feel relevant for the frequency of updating given the different fields of information. So that does happen, but it's kind of transparent to people behind the scenes. Obviously, we can't do it on like a triggered basis. Like we don't always know that they just changed jobs, so we should ask them to update their job title. But we are trying to do our best to keep that information current.
Worth noting here that it's been an interesting year for lots of people in terms of where they're living. So yeah, I'm sure we've seen a faster pace of change there than typical. Jennifer Miller asks, is there a plan to open up project builder permissions, right, i.e. the ability to share drafts across colleagues?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of the new builder work that we were doing in terms of improving that experience and how we group things, stuff I spoke to earlier, is that it's on a much better technical foundation. So part of the reason that we had challenges opening up the old experience for true collaboration were some legacy tech debt things that we were working around. So that as an optimization should be a little bit easier going forward than it has been in the past, but I don't have an exact timeline on where that sits in the roadmap, but it is something we hear quite a bit and is definitely something that is often being considered on our side.
JH, you're doing great. More questions on the way. Quotas, a couple questions about quota management and our thoughts on approaching that topic.
Yes. This one's tricky because it is so tied to the project and scheduling model we have right now. And it's one that we want to make sure we solve it in the right way. And so there's a couple ideas we're kicking around, probably beyond the scope of answering it in like 30 seconds here. Our general sense, as we've broken the problem down and talked to researchers about it, is fixing some of the schedule components and making the scheduling a little bit more flexible is going to give us a whole new set of opportunities around how quotas could fit into that. And so that is, I think, probably from an order of operations, I think we're likely to make some scheduling improvements that then give us some new ways to address the quota need as well.
Speaking of scheduling, we all know and love Calendly, which is not our main value prop. Folks love its availability feature. When is UI going to address our calendaring function next?
Yeah, so that's one. We're actually hiring to grow the product team a little bit to focus on what we call it like logistics, which is like you have qualified participants. What is everything that happens from there? And I think one of the big areas that team is going to focus on is scheduling. I don't know exactly what our solution is going to look like. I think we have a lot of discovery ahead of us in terms of, is there an integration option that we should pursue? There's other third-party tools. Can we build it ourselves? So I think you'll probably be hearing from us on that for your feedback and input on different solutions. But scheduling definitely on the radar for this year. I just don't have an exact timeline yet. Some of it's a little hiring dependent.
Thank you, JH. Bulk adding screener questions. Right now, we require folks to copy and paste or type. Will we at some point allow folks to upload a CSV of questions, for example?
That was one that has always been a little hard for us to crack, because whenever we've dug in with a researcher about how they would expect it to work, everyone kind of has a different question format that they would be planning to use for their importing. One thing we've thought about doing more of is leaning into the like saved and reusable questions and screeners in the UI platform. So that as you build things up in the platform, it's easier to mix and match from the library you have. So not to say that import's off the table, but it's been challenging when we've explored it in the past because everyone kind of has their own format. So that's one that is hard for us to know how to solve.
Last question, JH, team level payment. Is that something that we're going to look at via the current org discovery, i.e., a team level credit card versus a researcher level credit card?
Yes. So I think after we get that org and team stuff in place, there's a lot of opportunities that come out of it. Part of the reason we've been hesitant to do some stuff of that to date is we don't have a very robust permission structure and team organization structure. And so since everybody from an organization ends up in one team and we don't have permissions, you have a card on file, now everyone can use that card. The multiple teams and some additional permissions really solve that kind of liability issue quite a bit. So I think that comes into focus after some of that foundational work.
For all of our attendees, thank you so much for all these questions. I'm sorry that we didn't have time to answer all of them. Lesson learned, maybe for 30 minutes is not quite long enough. We will save all these questions and Brittany or myself will come back to you early next week with answers. We'll share those answers with the whole group too, so that everyone can benefit from that brain trust. Thank you, attendees, for all that you do. Thank you, JH. Thank you, Brittany. If anyone of you have questions after today, feel free to send me an email. I'm tucker@userinterviews.com.
Yeah, likewise. I'm jh@userinterviews.com. So I appreciate all the passion and questions here. And there's a lot of these things that we will need to be doing research on. So if you do have interest, please hit me up so that we know to reach out to you. I would love to get your feedback.
I think safe to say we'll be doing this again next quarter. Stay tuned.
Cool. JH@userinterviews. That's it.
Thanks, team.